The autumn sun painted Meadowbrook Gardens in shades of gold and amber. Our gated community where every lawn was perfectly manicured and every hedge trimmed to regulation height. It was the kind of neighborhood that looked like it belonged on a postcard, where peace and privilege went hand in hand. But on that October afternoon, peace shattered like glass beneath a hammer, and our lives changed forever. I pulled into our driveway at 3:47 p.m., earlier than usual. My phone had been vibrating non-stop in my pocket, each buzz sending a fresh wave of anxiety through my chest. Sarah, my wife, had been sending frantic messages. I'd been in back-to-back meetings all afternoon, unable to check my phone until I stepped out of the conference room. When I finally looked at the screen, my blood turned cold. The last message was only 4 words, but they stopped my heart. Emma, ambulance. Karen, hurry. Emma, my 12-year-old daughter, my beautiful, brilliant girl who had already fought more battles in her short life than most people face in a lifetime. 3 years ago, a drunk driver stole Emma's ability to walk. We'd been driving home from her art class when another car ran a red light and slammed into the passenger side where Emma sat. The impact was catastrophic. Emma's spine took the brunt of the collision, leaving her legs useless, her lower body paralyzed. The doctors said we were lucky she survived it all. Lucky, that was the word they used, while my 9-year-old daughter lay in a hospital bed, learning that she would never run again, never dance again, never feel grass beneath her toes. But Emma was stronger than any of us knew. She learned to navigate the world from her wheelchair with more grace and determination than most people manage on 2 functioning legs. She refused to let the accident define her. Instead, she threw herself into her art. She painted constantly, vibrant landscapes and portraits that captured emotion in ways that left people speechless. She dreamed of becoming an architect, designing buildings that would be accessible to everyone, because she understood what it meant to be shut out of spaces that others took for granted. I ran into the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. Sarah, Emma, my voice echoed through the empty rooms. Nothing. The silence was deafening. Then I heard it, faint but unmistakable. Sirens, growing louder with each passing second. I sprinted back outside and saw the ambulance 3 houses down, its lights painting the peaceful suburban street in harsh reds and blues. Neighbors had gathered in tight clusters on their lawns, whispering behind their hands, pointing toward the commotion. I pushed through the crowd, not caring whose toes I stepped on or whose personal space I invaded. Sarah stood near the back of the ambulance, her face drained of all color, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. When she saw me, her knees buckled. I caught her, held her tight as she shook in my arms. What happened? My voice came out raw, barely recognizable as my own. Karen, Sarah whispered against my chest. Karen did this. Karen Mitchell, HOA, president, the woman who measured grass height with an actual ruler and issued violation notices if your lawn exceeded 2.5 inches. The woman who sent certified letters if your Christmas lights stayed up past January 2nd. The woman who had made our lives miserable for the past 2 years. Ever since we installed a wheelchair ramp at our front entrance, she'd cited us for architectural violations, claimed the ramp was an eyesore, demanded we remove it. We'd fought her through the HOA board and won, but Karen never forgave us for challenging her authority. Where's Emma? I could barely get the words out. Sarah pointed to the ambulance. I didn't wait for permission. I ran, shoving past a paramedic who tried to stop me. There, on the stretcher, lay my daughter. Her face was twisted in agony, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. An oxygen mask covered her nose and mouth, and her eyes, when they found mine, were filled with a pain and terror I had never seen before. Emma, baby, I'm here. I grabbed her small hand, holding it as gently as I could. She tried to speak, but only a small, broken whimper escaped. Sir, please step back, a paramedic said firmly, placing a hand on my shoulder. We need to transport her immediately. Possible spinal injury. She can't move her upper body. The world tilted sideways. Spinal injury. Emma's spine had already been broken once. The doctors had warned us that another serious injury to her back could mean total paralysis. Neck down forever, trapped completely in her own body. I'm coming with her, I said. It wasn't a request. Sarah climbed into the ambulance with me, and between sobs, she told me what had happened. Emma had been outside, sitting in her wheelchair in front of our house, painting on her portable easel. It was something she did often on beautiful autumn afternoons. She loved capturing the neighborhood at this time of year. The way the golden leaves danced in the breeze, the orange pumpkins scattered across porches, the way the sunlight filtered through the trees and painted everything in warm honey tones. Karen had approached her, already angry, already aggressive. She'd started yelling about the easel being on common property, that 3-foot strip of grass between our driveway and the public sidewalk. It was the same spot where Emma always painted, the same spot where neighbors regularly stopped to admire her work and chat with her about art. But Karen didn't care about any of that. She told Emma to move immediately, Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage and grief. Emma explained that she was almost finished, just 10 more minutes. But Karen wouldn't listen. She started screaming about rules and property lines and disrespect for her authority. I felt my blood pressure rising, my vision narrowing to a pinpoint. Then what? Then Karen grabbed the wheelchair. Sarah's voice broke completely. She tried to push Emma away, but Emma was holding on to her easel. She didn't want to leave her painting behind. So Karen pulled harder. The wheelchair tipped backward. Sarah couldn't continue. She buried her face in her hands, her entire body convulsing with sobs. I closed my eyes, imagining my daughter falling, her already damaged spine taking the full impact of the ground. Emma, who had already suffered so much. Emma, who asked for so little from the world. Emma, who only wanted to paint in the sunshine. Karen left. Sarah finally managed to choke out. She walked away while Emma lay there screaming in pain. Mrs. Chin from next door was the one who called 911. Karen just went back to her house like nothing had happened. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. It wasn't just anger, though fury burned through my veins like acid. It was something else. Determination, clarity, a promise I made to myself in that moment. Karen Mitchell had broken my daughter. Now, I would systematically dismantle her entire world. The hours that followed passed like years. Emma was rushed into surgery. The doctors needed to stabilize her spine, to assess the full extent of the damage. They spoke in careful, measured tones that terrified me more than shouting would have. The next 24 hours are critical, the surgeon said, his face grave. We won't know the full extent of the damage until she wakes up. We need to manage your expectations, Mr. Crawford. The injury is severe. Manage expectations. Medical terminology for prepare for the worst. I sat in the waiting room with my head in my hands, trying not to imagine all the terrible possibilities. Sarah paced the floor, making calls to family members, her voice distant and mechanical. My phone buzzed. Messages from neighbors, offers of support, prayers, promises of casserole. Then a message from an unknown number stopped me cold. I heard about Emma. I'm so sorry. Karen has gone too far this time. I have something you need to see. Rita Gonzalez, 47 Maple Lane. Rita, she'd lived in Meadowbrook for 15 years. A quiet woman who kept to herself. I'd spoken to her maybe twice in the 4 years we'd lived here. I called her immediately. Mr. Crawford, she answered on the first ring. I have security footage. My camera faces the street. It caught everything. Send it to me. There's more, Rita said softly. I've kept quiet for too long. Karen has hurt people before, in different ways. But she's destroyed lives in this neighborhood. I have documentation, meeting minutes she's buried. Complaints she's ignored. Rules she's broken herself while enforcing them on others. I couldn't stay silent anymore. Not after what she did to your little girl. Why now? I asked, though I was grateful she was finally speaking up. Because I'm a coward, Rita said, her voice breaking. Karen ruined my son's college prospects 3 years ago. He wanted to start a small lawn care business to save money for school. Karen had it shut down, said it violated HOA rules about home businesses. But really, she just didn't like that he was Mexican. She made racist comments to his face. My son gave up on his dreams after that. He works at a warehouse now, loading boxes. I was too afraid to fight her then. But watching Emma on that stretcher, I can't be afraid anymore. Send me everything you have, I said. I watched the security footage on my phone while sitting in that sterile hospital waiting room. The video quality was crystal clear, the audio crisp enough to hear every word. There was Emma, sitting peacefully in her wheelchair, her face serene with concentration as she painted. Her canvas showed our neighborhood in beautiful autumn colors, every brushstroke careful and deliberate. Then Karen appeared in the frame, her face already twisted with anger before she even reached Emma. I turned up the volume. I've told you before about blocking common areas. Karen's voice was sharp, aggressive, loud enough to startle Emma. I'm not blocking anything. Mrs. Mitchell, Emma said politely, respectfully. I'm just painting. I'll be done soon. You'll move now. I am the HOA president, and you will respect my authority. Please, Mrs. Mitchell. Just 10 more minutes. I'm almost finished. Your parents think their crippled child deserves special treatment. Well, she doesn't. Rules are rules. I watched my daughter's face crumble at that word. Crippled. Watched her try desperately to hold back tears, to maintain her composure in the face of such casual cruelty. I'm sorry if I upset you, Emma said, her voice small and wounded. I just wanted to paint. Get off this property now. Then Karen grabbed the wheelchair handles. Emma instinctively gripped her easel, trying to save the painting she'd spent hours working on. Karen pulled harder, yanking the wheelchair backward with shocking force. The front wheels lifted off the ground. Emma's face showed pure panic. Please stop, Emma cried out. Karen pulled one more time, viciously, deliberately. The wheelchair tipped. Emma fell backward, the easel crashing down on top of her. Her head hit the ground first, then her back struck at an angle that made my stomach turn. Emma's scream pierced through the phone speaker, a sound of pure, unfiltered agony that I knew would haunt me for the rest of my life. Karen stood there for 3 seconds, just standing there, looking down at my broken, screaming daughter, lying on the ground. Then she turned and walked away. She didn't check if Emma was breathing. She didn't call for help. She didn't even look back. She just walked away like she'd done nothing more consequential than pulling a weed. I watched Mrs. Chin run over from her yard. Watched her kneel beside Emma with shaking hands. Watched her pull out her phone to call 911. Tears poured down my face. Not sad tears. Burny, hateful tears that felt like they could melt steel. Sarah looked at me. What is that? Evidence, I said. Rita Gonzalez sent it. Security footage. Sarah watched it. Halfway through, she had to look away, her hand over her mouth. Oh God, she called our baby crippled. She just left her there suffering. I made a call. David, it's Michael. I need you to do something for me. David Park, my attorney, one of the best in the state, a man I'd worked with on several high-profile cases over the years. Anything, David said immediately. I heard about Emma. How is she? In surgery. David, I'm sending you a video. I need you to file charges. Assault, negligence, everything you can think of. I want Karen Mitchell buried under the full weight of the law. Consider it done. Michael, I'm so sorry this happened. Don't be sorry. Just help me make this right. Emma came out of surgery at 11:43 p.m. The surgeon approached us, his expression carefully guarded in that way doctors have when the news isn't good. She's stable, he said, but the injury is significant. She has regained some sensation in her arms, which is positive. However, her hands, the nerve damage is extensive. We won't know for several weeks if she regained fine motor control. I felt Sarah grip my arm so hard it hurt. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew. I didn't want to know, but I had to hear it. It means Emma may never be able to use her hands properly again. No writing, no drawing, no painting. We're hopeful, but we need to be realistic about the possibilities. No painting. Emma's entire world. Her escape, her joy, her future career, her identity. I felt something break inside me. No, not break. It crystallized, hardened into diamond-sharp clarity of purpose. Can we see her? Emma was awake when we entered her room. Tubes and wires connected her to various machines that beeped and hummed. A neck brace immobilized her head and upper spine, but her eyes were open, aware, filled with fear. Mom, Dad, her voice was weak, frightened in a way that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. We're here, baby. Sarah kissed her forehead gently, carefully avoiding the bruises already forming on her skin. I can't feel my fingers, Emma whispered. Dad, I can't feel my fingers. How will I paint? I took her hand carefully, feeling the warmth of it but seeing no movement in response to my touch. We'll figure it out, I promised her. Whatever it takes, we'll figure it out. You're going to paint again. My painting, Emma said, tears rolling sideways toward her ears. My autumn painting. Did it survive? Sarah and I exchanged glances. We'll get you new paints, new canvases, I started to say. No, Emma interrupted, her voice urgent despite her weakness. That painting was special. I was painting it for Mrs. Chin. It's her last autumn in the neighborhood before she moves to be with her daughter in California. I wanted to give her something to remember us by, something beautiful. Did it survive? My heart shattered completely. Even lying in a hospital bed, paralyzed and in pain, Emma was thinking of others. She wanted to know if she could still give a gift to a neighbor. While Karen Mitchell had shown no humanity at all, my 12-year-old daughter embodied everything good and pure in this world. I'll find out, I promised her. I stepped into the hallway and called Rita again. The painting Emma was working on. Do you know what happened to it? Mrs. Chin has it, Rita said. It's damaged, torn in one corner where it hit the ground, but she saved it. She's keeping it safe, thank you. I texted David Park. Make the charges formal. File first thing tomorrow morning. I want this public. His response came immediately. Already drafted. We file at 9a.m. I've also contacted the local news stations. They want to interview you. Set it up. I had spent 20 years working in law enforcement, 15 years as a detective, working my way up through the ranks by being thorough, relentless, and fair. 3 years as assistant commissioner of police for the entire county, overseeing hundreds of officers, managing complex investigations, wielding significant power and influence. I had connections throughout the legal system, relationships with judges and prosecutors, resources that most people could never access. I had stayed deliberately silent about my position in our neighborhood. I never wore my badge at home. Never mentioned my job unless directly asked. Never threw my weight around. I believed in being a good neighbor first, not a powerful official. I wanted Emma to grow up in a community where she was accepted for who she was, not because her father was a cop who people were afraid to cross. That changed the moment. Karen Mitchell broke my daughter's spine. Now she would learn exactly who she had chosen to cross. The next morning, the news broke. Not quietly, not buried in the back pages. David had made absolutely certain of that. HOA president charged with assault after disabled child seriously injured. Read the headlines across every local news outlet. My phone rang constantly. News reporters, fellow officers, city officials, all wanting comment, wanting details, wanting to know how something like this could happen. By noon, the story had gone viral. The security footage, with Emma's face carefully blurred to protect her privacy. Played on every local television channel and spread across social media like wildfire. People were outraged. The comment sections overflowed with fury at Karen, with sympathy for Emma, with demands for justice. Donations poured into a fund David had set up for Emma's medical expenses. Over $50,000 in the first 6 hours alone. I drove home briefly to shower and change clothes. News vans lined our street, reporters calling my name, trying to get a statement. I ignored them all, walking into my house with my head down. Mrs. Chin stood on her porch, her elderly face creased with worry. I walked over to her. "Mr. Crawford," she said, her eyes red from crying. "Emma's painting. I have it inside. I saved it for her." She brought out the canvas. It was torn in the bottom corner, smeared with dirt where it had hit the ground, but it was still beautiful. Emma had captured the golden afternoon light perfectly. The peaceful feeling of autumn in our neighborhood. The sense of home and community that should have protected her. "She was painting this for you," I said. Mrs. Chin's hands trembled as she held it. "She told me last week. Such a sweet child, Mr. Crawford. So kind and talented." She looked up at me with fierce determination in her eyes. "I gave my statement to the police this morning. I told them everything I saw, everything I heard. That woman is evil." "Thank you. There's something else," Mrs. Chin said quietly, glancing around as if afraid Karen might appear. "Karen came to my house last night. Late, around 10 p.m. She wanted me to say I didn't see anything. She threatened to have my property cited for violations, to make my last few months here miserable if I testified against her." Mrs. Chin straightened her shoulders, her expression hardening. "I told her no. I told her what she did was evil and unforgivable." She laughed at me. She said no one would believe a disabled child over an HOA president with a spotless record. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. She said that. Those exact words. "Worse," she said, and I quote, "that crippled brat and her family have been a problem since they moved here. This will teach them their place." I pulled out my phone. "Mrs. Chin, would you be willing to say that on record?" "To a detective, I already did. I called Detective Santos this morning and told her everything." Detective Maria Santos. One of my best investigators, sharp and thorough and absolutely relentless when she smelled injustice. She must have moved incredibly fast on this. My phone rang. "Detective Santos." "Commissioner," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "We have a situation. Karen Mitchell just tried to flee. We caught her at the airport with one-way tickets to Canada. We've detained her, charged her with attempted flight." "Already done, sir, but there's more. We executed a search warrant on her home this morning. We found financial documents. Commissioner, she's been embezzling from the HOA for years. Nearly $200,000, all carefully hidden in various accounts." I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. It was not a pleasant smile. "How long has the district attorney known?" "I'm on the phone with her office right now. They're talking felony assault, embezzlement, fraud, witness intimidation." "Commissioner, Karen Mitchell is looking at serious prison time. Good, keep me updated on everything." I hung up and looked at Mrs. Chin. "Thank you for standing up for Emma, for finally speaking the truth. That child has more goodness in one finger than Karen Mitchell has in her entire body," Mrs. Chin said fiercely. "I only wish I had stood up sooner, before it came to this." By that evening, something unexpected began to happen. The neighborhood rose up in a way I had never seen before. Someone had created a Facebook group called Justice for Emma Crawford. It had 3,000 members by the end of the first day. People began sharing their own stories of Karen's cruelty, incidents that had been buried under fear and intimidation for years. The Martinez family posted about how Karen had their therapy dog taken away, claiming it was aggressive when it was actually a certified therapy animal for their autistic son. The family spent thousands in legal fees fighting to get the dog back, money they didn't have. While their son deteriorated without his support animal, the Johnsons shared how Karen had cited them repeatedly for their daughter's pink bicycle on their own driveway, calling it an eyesore that violated aesthetic standards. She made their lives so miserable with constant violations and fines that they'd nearly been forced to move. The Hendersons described how Karen had called the police on their son's birthday party, filing noise complaints at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon. She'd stood on her porch with her arms crossed, smiling, while police officers questioned them in front of their crying 80-year-old son and his frightened friends. Story after story, cruelty after cruelty, a pattern of targeting anyone she deemed beneath her. Anyone who challenged her authority, anyone who didn't fit her vision of what the neighborhood should be. Karen had terrorized Meadowbrook Gardens for years, and everyone had been too afraid to speak up, too worried about retaliation, too convinced that one person couldn't fight the system. Until now, a petition circulated demanding Karen's immediate resignation from the HOA, 147 signatures in 2 hours. Nearly every household in the community. An emergency HOA meeting was called for the following evening. I attended, sitting quietly in the back of the room. Karen's vice president, Robert Chin, Mrs. Chin's nephew, stood at the podium. His face was grim with purpose. In light of recent events and the discoveries about our president's conduct, he said clearly, I move for an immediate vote of no confidence in President Karen Mitchell. Seconded, came a chorus of voices from around the room. The vote was unanimous, 147-0. Karen Mitchell was removed from power. Her reign of terror officially ended. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Rita Gonzalez had sent me files, hundreds of pages of documents she'd been quietly collecting for years. I spent that night reading through them while Sarah sat vigil with Emma at the hospital. What I found was damning beyond anything I'd expected. Karen had been running the HOA like a personal dictatorship. She had created rules that didn't actually exist in the bylaws, then enforced them selectively against people she didn't like. She had pocketed money from violation fines. She had deliberately targeted families she deemed undesirable minorities, disabled residents, anyone who challenged her authority or didn't fit her narrow definition of acceptable. But one document caught my attention more than the others. An old complaint filed 5 years ago by a family named Peterson. They had a son with cerebral palsy and had installed a wheelchair ramp, just like we had. Karen had somehow gotten the ramp removed, citing architectural violations that didn't actually exist in the HOA rules. When the Peterson family fought back, Karen made their lives an absolute hell. Violations every single week, fines that mounted into the thousands, anonymous complaints to Child Protective Services questioning their ability to care for their disabled son. The stress became unbearable. They sold their house at a significant loss and moved away. I found the Peterson family through social media and called them. Mr. Crawford, James Peterson said when he answered, I saw the news about Emma. I'm so sorry about your daughter. How is she? She's going to survive. I said, Mr. Peterson, I found records of what Karen Mitchell did to your family 5 years ago. Would you be willing to testify if this goes to trial? There was a long silence. Then, you're actually going after her. Really going after her? Yes, then count us in. What she did to our family. My son never recovered emotionally. He became severely depressed, stopped going to therapy, stopped trying. He's 16 now and he still asks why people hated him just for being disabled. We should have fought harder. We didn't. But we'll help you now. Over the next few days, I found 4 other families, all targeted by Karen, all willing to testify, all carrying years of pain and trauma from her systematic cruelty. David Park smiled grimly when I gave him the names. This just became a pattern of discrimination. Michael, federal charges, civil rights violations. We're not just putting her in prison, we're making an example that will echo through every HOA in this country. Good. Emma's doctors worked what I can only describe as miracles. Slowly, painfully slowly, sensation began returning to her hands. Tiny movements in her fingers. It wasn't full recovery. It might never be full recovery. But it was hope, and hope was everything. Emma cried when she could wiggle her thumb. Sarah and I cried with her, holding our daughter and feeling grateful for every tiny improvement. I want to paint again, Emma said, her voice determined. Even if it's messy. Even if it's not good anymore. I need to paint, Dad. I need to create something. The occupational therapist brought adapted tools, special grips for brushes designed for people with limited hand function. Emma tried. Her hand shook violently. The lines were wobbly, nothing like her previous precise work. She broke down sobbing. It's ruined. She ruined me. I held my daughter while she cried, feeling helpless and furious and heartbroken all at once. You are not ruined, I said firmly. You are strong, you are brave, and you are still the most talented artist I know. This is just a new challenge, and you've overcome every challenge life has thrown at you. My hands don't work anymore. Then we'll find new ways, new technology, adaptive tools, voice-controlled programs. Emma, I promise you, you will paint again. You will create again. This is not the end of your story. She looked at me with those trusting eyes. Promise. I promise. I contacted the best occupational therapists in the country, specialists in nerve damage recovery, experts in adaptive technology for artists with disabilities. Money was absolutely no object. Emma would have every possible chance at recovery. And slowly, painfully slowly, progress came. Emma learned to hold a brush differently, to use different muscle groups, to work with her limitations instead of against them. The shaking decreased. Her lines became steadier. Her confidence grew. 3 weeks after the injury, Emma completed a small painting. Just a simple flower. The lines not quite straight. The colors bleeding together in places. But she had done it entirely by herself. She cried tears of joy. We all did. Karen Mitchell's trial became a media sensation. The courtroom was packed every single day. The evidence against her was overwhelming and damning. The security footage played in court. The jury watched in horrified silence as Karen called my daughter a slur and violently yanked her wheelchair backward. Several jurors openly wiped their eyes. One woman covered her mouth, looking like she might be sick. Mrs. Chin testified, her voice shaking but staying strong throughout. She laughed. Mrs. Chin said, staring directly at Karen. After she hurt that child, when she came to threaten me, she laughed about it. She said it would teach them their place. The Peterson family testified. James Peterson's voice broke as he described his son's depression, the therapy bills they couldn't afford, the permanent psychological damage done to a child who only wanted to be accepted. For other families told their stories. A clear, undeniable pattern of cruelty emerged. Karen's defense attorney had no adequate answers. No way to explain away the mountain of evidence and testimony. Then came the embezzlement evidence. Bank records showing systematic theft. Forged signatures on HOA documents. Fake invoices for work that was never done. $187,000 stolen from the community fund over 5 years. Karen's face remained cold and impassive throughout the trial. No remorse, no tears, no apology. Just anger that she'd been caught, that her victims had finally found the courage to speak up. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Karen. I wanted her to see my face, to understand exactly what she'd done and who she'd done it to. My daughter Emma is 12 years old, I said, my voice steady and clear. She dreams of being an architect. She wants to design buildings that help people like her, people in wheelchairs, people with disabilities. She is kind, talented, and extraordinarily brave. I paused, letting the words sink in. You called her a cripple. You assaulted her. You damaged her spine and her hands, potentially destroying her ability to pursue the career she's dreamed of since she was small. You tried to destroy her future because you couldn't stand that a disabled child existed in your perfect neighborhood. Karen's lawyer objected. The judge allowed my statement to continue. But you failed, I said, leaning forward. Emma is stronger than you could ever be. She's painting again. Her hands are healing. She will achieve her dreams, every single one of them. And you'll have nothing but a prison cell and the knowledge that you destroyed yourself through your own cruelty. The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Assault causing bodily harm, embezzlement, fraud, witness, intimidation, discrimination, civil rights violations. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Our neighbors filled the gallery, all wearing purple ribbons, Emma's favorite color. The local news cameras recorded everything. Karen stood before the judge, her lawyer beside her. For the first time, she looked small, diminished. The power she'd wielded for so long completely stripped away. The judge spoke, her voice stern and uncompromising. Ms. Mitchell, I have reviewed this case thoroughly. The evidence shows a pattern of cruelty, discrimination, and criminal behavior spanning many years. You systematically targeted vulnerable people. You abused your position of power. And when confronted with the consequences of your actions, you showed absolutely no remorse. Karen's lawyer tried to speak. The judge held up a hand, silencing him. Most troubling to this court is your assault on Emma Crawford, a disabled child who was doing nothing more than pursuing her art. You called her a slur. You assaulted her viciously. You left her suffering on the ground without checking if she was even alive. The medical evidence shows she may never fully recover the use of her hands. A young artist, possibly permanently disabled, because of your deliberate actions. The judge looked directly at Karen with unconcealed disgust. This court has received over 200 letters. Letters from families you terrorized, from neighbors you bullied, from Emma's doctors describing the severity of her injuries, and one letter from Emma herself. My heart clenched. Emma had written a letter without telling us. Without asking for help, Emma Crawford wrote. The judge continued, her voice softening slightly. I forgive Mrs. Mitchell, but I hope she learns that being mean doesn't make you powerful. Being kind does. I hope in prison she finds kindness in her heart. Because living with so much hate must be terribly lonely. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. My own eyes burned. My 12-year-old daughter, showing more grace and wisdom than most adults could manage. This 12-year-old child, whom you attempted to break, the judge said, shows more wisdom and humanity than you have demonstrated in your entire life. On the charge of assault causing bodily harm, I sentence you to 15 years in state prison. On the charges of embezzlement and fraud, 10 years to run consecutively. On civil rights violations, an additional 5 years. Total sentence, 30 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole after serving 20 years. Karen's face went white. 20 years minimum. Additionally, the judge continued, you are ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA in the amount of $187,000, plus $500,000 to the Crawford family for Emma's medical expenses, pain and suffering, and future therapy costs. Your assets will be liquidated to meet these obligations. The gavel fell with a sharp crack. Karen was led away in handcuffs. She looked back once, and our eyes met. I saw nothing there. No regret, no humanity, just emptiness. She was already gone, in every way that mattered. 6 months later, Emma stood before her easel in our backyard. It was autumn again, the golden light filtering through the trees just like it had on that terrible day. But everything was different now. Her hands still trembled slightly when she painted, but she had learned to work with the tremor, to incorporate it into her style. Her paintings were different now, bolder strokes, more impressionistic than precise, but they were beautiful in a whole new way. She had developed her own technique, adapted to her new reality, and created art that was uniquely, powerfully hers. She had painted our neighborhood again, but this time it included something new. People, neighbors helping neighbors, Mrs. Chin watering flowers, children playing in yards without fear, Mr. Martinez walking his therapy dog proudly, the Johnson's daughter riding her pink bicycle with a huge smile, a community healed and united. What do you think? Emma asked, gesturing to the canvas. It's absolutely perfect, I said honestly. I call it home, Emma said softly, because that's what this place finally became. After everything that happened, people stood up. They protected each other. They became a real community. That's what home means. Sarah hugged Emma carefully, always mindful of her back. You did that, sweetheart. Your courage helped people find their own courage. The HOA had new leadership now. Robert Chin ran it with fairness, transparency, and genuine compassion. The first thing the new board did was create a fund to help families with disabled members make necessary home modifications without bureaucratic harassment. They named it Emma's Fund, and it had already helped 6 families in just a few months. Emma had received a full scholarship to a prestigious art camp for disabled youth that summer. She'd made friends there, found mentors who understood her struggles and celebrated her adaptations. Her artwork was featured in a gallery exhibition titled Unbroken, Art by Adaptive Artists. The opening night drew hundreds of people. The Peterson family came to the exhibition. Their son, Daniel, stood in front of Emma's paintings with tears streaming down his face. She's doing it, he whispered to his father. She's not letting what happened stop her. She's not letting them win. James Peterson looked at me, his own eyes wet. Thank you for fighting, for showing us that we should have fought to, for proving that people like Karen don't get to win. It's never too late to stand up, I said. Your testimony helped put her away. You got your justice too. Daniel Peterson approached Emma, shy and hesitant. Your paintings are amazing. They're so full of life. Emma smiled warmly at him. Thank you. Do you paint? I used to, he said quietly. Before everything happened, before people were so mean about who I was, Emma reached out and offered him one of her adapted brushes. Paint with me sometime. We can be wobbly together. Sometimes, the wobbly lines tell better stories anyway. I watched them talk to kids who had every reason in the world to give up, to be bitter, to let cruelty define them. But instead, they chose creation. They chose connection. They chose to keep going. Emma is 15 now. Her hands have healed remarkably well, though she still has limitations she carry for the rest of her life. But she's adapted in ways that amaze me every single day. She's thrived in ways I wasn't sure were possible during those dark hours in the hospital. She's starting high school next month. Already, at the top of her class, taking college-level architecture courses that challenge and excite her. Her bedroom walls are covered with building designs, every single one featuring universal accessibility. Ramps that look like art installations, elevators disguised as sculptural elements, buttons and controls at heights that work for everyone. She's not just designing buildings. She's redesigning the way people think about space and accessibility. Karen Mitchell is in year 3 of her 30-year sentence. I don't think about her often anymore. She became irrelevant the moment she walked away from Emma, lying broken on the ground. Our energy has gone entirely toward healing, toward building, toward living fully. We don't have space for hate. We never did. The neighborhood is different now in the best possible ways. Softer, kinder, more human. People actually look out for each other now. They stop to talk. They help without being asked. The rules matter far less than the people following them. It's become the community we always hoped it would. Mrs. Chin's daughter moved back to the area last year. Mrs. Chin now lives with her just 2 streets over, close enough to remain part of the neighborhood she loves. She visits Emma every week without fail. They paint together, 2 artists of different generations finding joy in creation. Emma's damaged autumn painting, carefully repaired and framed, hangs in Mrs. Chin's living room, a reminder that beautiful things can survive breaking. That damage doesn't mean destruction. I'm still Assistant Commissioner of Police, but I'm home more now. My priorities shifted the day I realized how quickly everything that matters can be taken away. Emma taught me something profound. Power means absolutely nothing if you don't use it to protect the vulnerable, to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, to make the world more just and more kind. Tonight, Emma is in her room painting. I can hear her humming softly, the way she always does when she creates. It's a sound that fills our house with life and hope. Sarah and I stand in the doorway watching our daughter work. This warrior in a wheelchair. This artist with trembling hands. This girl with an absolutely unbreakable spirit. She's going to change the world. Sarah whispers, leaning her head against my shoulder. She already has. I reply, and I mean it with every fiber of my being. Emma turns, catching us watching her. What? She asks with that beautiful smile. Nothing, sweetheart. We just love you. She grins, that pure joy that no amount of cruelty could extinguish. I love you too. Want to see what I'm working on? We walk into her room. Her canvas shows a building, tall and modern and beautiful. But at its base, a wide ramp curves gracefully upward, integrated so naturally into the design that it looks like it belongs there from the very beginning. Windows positioned at wheelchair height, buttons and controls that everyone can reach, doorways wide enough for any mobility device, beauty and function in perfect harmony. It's my dream, Emma says, her voice filled with quiet determination. The first building I'll design when I'm an architect. I'm calling it the house of everyone because everyone deserves a home they can enter, spaces they can navigate, a world that welcomes them. I hug my daughter, this extraordinary human being who refused to let trauma define her. Karen Mitchell tried to break her. She tried to destroy Emma's spirit, her dreams, her future. Instead, Emma broke every limitation that anyone tried to place on her. She shattered expectations. She rewrote her own story. And that, I realize, is the greatest revenge of all. Not destroying your enemy, though Karen certainly destroyed herself. The real victory is refusing to be destroyed, living fully despite the pain, loving fiercely despite the cruelty, creating beauty from ashes, moving forward when everything in you wants to stay frozen in that moment of trauma. Emma is painting her future one slightly wobbly brushstroke at a time, and it is absolutely magnificent. She is magnificent. And every single day, I'm grateful that the world gets to experience the gift of who she is, and who she's becoming. Karen Mitchell sits in a prison cell. Emma Crawford sits before an easel, creating worlds. In the end, that's the only justice that truly matters. The cruel fade into the kind, the brave, the unbreakable, they change everything. And Emma is just getting started.